Bibo Shu is product manager for Project Astra, an app in a new generation of chatbots that interpret the world with their own eyes. We challenged Astra with virtual paintings we chose and showed to Astra for the first time.
This is July Hay by Thomas Hart Benton from 1942.
How about this one?
That is The Virgin of Charity by El Greco. That painting is Automat by Edward Hopper.
The person in the painting. What emotion is she exhibiting?
The subject in the painting appears pensive and contemplative, her expression suggesting a sense of solitude.
Can you create a story around this picture?
It's a chilly evening in the city. A Tuesday, perhaps. The woman, perhaps named Eleanor, sits alone in the diner. She is feeling melancholy due to the uncertainty of her future and the weight of unfulfilled dreams. The scene freezes in time, only the flow of ideas moving onward.
That line, only the flow of ideas moving onward? I wish I'd written that.
So I'm going to stop here, and there's more to it. You can find this clip on Instagram and similar clips. Basically, the whole idea is that so much is happening in the space of AI that's keeping up with it. Actually, it's not even easy for someone with me who, basically dabbles in AI to do that. So let me then dive into my presentation. This presentation, I should provide it with a disclaimer that it's a non-technical presentation on a very technical topic. I'm going to do my best to just bring the concepts to the forefront of where we are, how rapidly this world is changing, how it's going to be impactful to all of us, but what are also some challenges of that. So I will cover and do a better refresher for make sure everybody is on the same page on what AI is and where it's heading. Then I'm going to talk about one of the most recent trends in AI known as agentic AI or AI agents, which has really become, as defined, the 2025 as the year of agentic AI. And that's what basically is the main point, that within 2-3 years of the generative AI, which everybody thought it was very revolutionary and became a buzz, we already have moved into the next phase of it. And then I'm going to talk about some business examples of it and conclude by the challenges and perils of AI. Just to make sure everybody's on the same page, and this is the slide I used during my presentation, and usually that's what I start with. I want to make sure everybody is basically aware of that definition of AI has evolved since the first time it got coined in 1956. And it is changing, is rapidly changing, its capabilities changing, all that. So right now, really, it refers to, in a very high level, to the study and design of intelligent agents now. That's why the word agents I brought in here too, because before, everybody was thinking of artificial intelligence as just a virtual intelligence mimicking human cognitive capability, which in many ways it is, and in many ways is going to be heading that direction with the concept of AGI, artificial general intelligence. But right now, we are moving into a different trajectory and different paths. And so this definition is very time sensitive, and I'm sure if next time I'm presenting again on this topic, will be a new definition. Also, AI is a superset of many activities that in the past people were involved with and very focused on, such as machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, large language models, and the generative AI that has come out of it, and now more recently agents. So whenever people refer to AI, depending on whether you're in an academic research environment or in general public, may have different connotations, different contexts, but it's a very broad. But generally, everybody refers to AI, it's mostly in the large scope of that. As you all remember, November of 2022, when the OpenAI launched its first chat GPT and made it available public, within a month of it, there were 1 million subscribers. Already I'm hearing that the subscribers to these platforms have surpassed 1 billion overall worldwide. So we're dealing with a very rapidly advancing technological changes, very rapidly adaptation of these things. And the Gen AI, which they said revolutionized in terms of creation of content or text or others, as we've seen, has evolved into projects that we just saw that clip of it, that even 60 Minutes now covering the project called Astra, the DeepMind and the Gemini deep research portion of Google, that it's not yet publicly available but these are the kind of things coming out that were built and surpassed the early capabilities. So if you use a ChatGPT when it first came out, significant advancement happening in those platforms since then. And this whole trend, this whole AI trend, as we've been talking about, is a continuation of the technological industrial revolution that has started out as Industrial Revolution 1.0, which machines basically replace our physical prowess or enhance or augmented our physical power. We're now definitely in the era that all the tools that are coming out are really enhancing and empowering our cognitive capabilities to the point, in fact, some people fear that it may replace our own cognitive capabilities. There are different school of thoughts on it. I personally, don't subscribe to the very negative projections of AI, but there are limitations we're going to talk about later. But definitely what is coming out are significant enhancement to our cognitive capabilities. For business purposes, the consulting firm Gartner always likes to put together what's called a hype cycle, which talks about anytime a new technology comes up and everybody jumps on that wagon, it gets hyped, but then it goes through what's called a maturity cycle. Right now, in fact, depending on who you talk to, everybody thinks we already are in the maturity cycle. The adaptation of AI, the number of new startups, the number of new platform technology has, in fact, surpassed. This is 2024, so anytime you have this, it's very dated. I tried to find their 2025 version. It was not available unless you subscribe to Gartner, which is a very hefty price for subscription. But we already, a lot of capabilities that is mentioned here, or the projection that it's going to be 2 to 5 years, I think is already happening. So I think the progression of AI advancement is much quicker than even our consultants are able to gather information and to make projections on that too. But we definitely, all the things they're talking about here, such as edge AI, agents, all that, and application of it to robots and smart robots already is in play. And as you all remember, when Gen AI came, everybody's looking at what's going to be new emerging technological stack that it's AI driven. And as you know, all we talked about in the past 10, 20 years was data analytics, big data, and data feeding that. But data, despite the fact as important it is and the source of it, and now with the ability of AI to generate synthetic version of it, still is the foundation. But the AI infrastructure has expanded significantly, both in terms of the physical sense, the computers needed to do AI, such as the graphical processing units capabilities, the software platforms, and these various models that were built on top of these infrastructure, large language models, now are moving into more of what they call a customized or smaller language models that are very task-oriented. So as the initial direction was to move toward more AI apps, and it happened quite a bit, the latest efforts and attempts are all going to be on this top right-hand layer known as agents. And we're going to talk about what those agents are, because that's really the main trend and main focus of this presentation. So this, as I said, all analysts, all technologists are really defining this year, the year 2025, as the year of agents. And the agents are transforming this space, if not more than what generative AI did in 2022, but it definitely not less than. So the question is that, what is an AI agent? And that's, I think, the main conversation that I'm going to spend time here on the non-technical basis, trying to give a sense of that, what an agent is. An AI agent, similar to all the other previous platforms, is a software component, but basically has the capabilities based on how it's designed, how it's developed to act on behalf of a user, a system, or an entity. And that's what the kind of agent really has. It has the agency to act. And that's where, when we're going to do comparison between the agent versus the previous attempts of AI, that what changes has transpired. It is very autonomous. We're going to say that has also self-learning capabilities to act on its own without even needing human intervention. And that's what really what's changing. That's a major transformation that's happening. And the users can organize agents for multiple tasks and divide the complex workflow into various tasks that each agent will address, will tackle, and will perform a lot better than a one human intervene approach of using AI to deal with a very complex problem. And we're going to see examples of it, what that means, how you could basically leverage agents to perform a complex task by dividing those tasks among certain type of agents. And agents, just similar to the generative AI, can act on their own, generate text, generate voice, generate audio, future probably generate video, and make decision. And depending on the context of industry that are being deployed, to act on behalf of that, whoever is in charge of that industry organization, and that too. And then as they collect data, and as we're going to see that, as they collect data, go through their own self-analysis of improving the process, okay? So what are the key characteristics of an AI agent? As I mentioned, they are pretty autonomous, meaning that you're building enough logic into each agent that based on the input it receives, based on the action it takes, based on the responses and feedback it gets, to do self-correction and basically analysis to improve the decision-making processes. It's very similar. In fact, I mean, if we divide our own human task into a variety of tasks, like, if I thirsty that, I say, okay, I need a bottle of water. All right, so when I grab a bottle of water, drink it, see if it quenches my thirst. That's a simple task only for one purpose of my needs, quenching my thirst. So if I could have a lot of activities like that I can divide those activities, I could create agents that become my extension of my needs, create what's called personal assistant. And that's where really we're going to see that the example that you saw was being displayed on 60 Minutes, that it's way beyond when the current search engine is. It's not that you're pointing your camera, or in this case, a smart device, into an object and asking what that is, which is really more advanced way of searching that. You're engaging, interacting with that assistant into providing you with the background about that object, the contents of the object, do some content creation with that object, as the reporter was asking that, what is the sentiment, mood of that person into that painting? Can you write a story about it? So there's no limit of what you could do with that kind of personal assistance in that regard, okay? It does generate, so agents also are generative. They can create original content, text, images, that. They are very adaptable because they receive feedback and input from the environment, and they take and update their reasoning and logics based on that. And they're adding to it these days conversational abilities. And we're going to see that one of the key areas that this fits into it in the future, you're going to have carry-on conversations with these so-called AI agents that's so human-like. Like the example that, again, the clip you will watch, he's asking, said that, well, she comes back with a sentiment, oh, and then he said, oh, are you tired of this conversation? He said, no, just wanted to have a human emotion representation of this conversation. So you're going to have AI agents that express or mimic some human emotions in a conversation with you. Now, this may be more for fun, like the Astra project was showing. We can imagine this used in a context like, say, healthcare, when you have a AI agent conversing with a patient post a discharge in a very acute condition, to have a conversation, intelligent conversation, not a menu-driven that if you have this condition, press one, that. An intelligent conversation that, how are you feeling? Are you taking your medication? Do you have any pain? And based on the feedback, carry on that intelligent conversation to provide the level of care that a human caretaker may need, which we always have shortage of. So these are the kind of things that we're going to look into, that capabilities that. So now I'm going to go a little bit over the general architecture or type of agents that it is. Again, I'm trying to keep this non-technical because of our audience online and all the people who have a different background. But just going to give you a sense of that, how agents are working. For instance, this is an example of that, what an AI agent for doing analytics or analysis can do. In the past, when we wanted to data analysis, it was a very human interventional based sequential type of that we had to collect the data. We had to spend time to basically prep the data, as we call data preparation, cleanse the data, munch the data, wrangle the data, whatever the buzzword is on the street. And once that data is prepared, run series of what we call descriptive analytics to get the story of data, that what is the story telling us, run it through some diagnostic analytics, and then use it to make predictions, that's the foundation of predictive analytics and machine learning to automation, all that too. Now, all this thing can be done through a agent for analytics that basically it tries to collect the data its own, inspect the data, examine the data, prep the data, cleans the data, whatever needs to be done, and run series of diagnostics, descriptive diagnostics, and predictive analytics to it, and then provide suggestions for the use of it in an actionable way, which is ultimately the whole notion of what we call prescriptive analytics. All these things can be done now in a very customized way based on your type of industry. So if you're in finance, you can create an AI agent to do financial analytics, whether it is on the investment side, whether it's on the retail banking side, whether it's on the loan management side of it, all that. So what are the differences? What has happened? I mean, what is the change or the values that this agentics approach is now providing versus the traditional analytics, or more of what happened over the last couple of years, the AI-assisted analytics? We're moving from a very static to a very fully adaptive and dynamic. That's the beauty of it. In other words, we are not just doing one analysis and then, look at our results and then basically that's it. Versus these agentic AIs, they basically have the capabilities to continually monitor, observe data, and update, including not only update the analysis, but also, as we're going to see in the future, update the reasoning. Bear in mind, AI, especially the large language models, foundationally, the main thing they're doing are based on reasoning. Reasoning that is either a blend of pattern recognition, inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning, all that. Once you build that into and build mechanisms of self-analysis, self-learning, they really are improving your reasoning. This is basically our human cognitive ability. We try to act or behave, hopefully, not everyone, hopefully, based on some type of reasoning, based on our observations, based on some rational conversations. And often our emotions also are blended into it as well. And these agents are moving in that direction to bring all those different things. Emotional analytics are not yet there, but I won't be surprised as we're beginning to see in some robots that with the cognitive capabilities they're adding to them, with the observation they make, they're trying to at least mimic or resemble some emotional intelligence as well. And the other change is from being a reactive to proactive, meaning that because you already have that capabilities to receive input, analyze them, update them, you are always taking action ahead of the change. We're going to see an example like that, same thing in healthcare. Most of the healthcare practices today are reactive. The system, the infrastructure is built that reacts only when a patient, due to a disease or discomfort or an injury or whatever emergency comes to the system reacts. We do not really have a proactive wellness program, despite all the resources available to that. All the gears that have emerged over the last few years in terms of wearables, where collect all the so-called wellness data, which people use only for exercises in a fitness setting, all this could be leveraged for proactive. There are devices that, as everybody uses, including even my Apple Watch, that basically monitors your heartbeat, also can do an EKG that's connected to my cell phone, connected to possibly care. So you could have all these variables, devices that are emerging marketplace, collecting your vital information and act more in a proactive way on cases like that, especially for chronic disease management, people with diabetes, cardio, or other conditions. So these are the kind of changes that capabilities are emerging. I'm not going to go through every one of them, but what is basically changing are a significant change from a very reactive, static approach of generative AI and previous generative AI, a traditional way to do data analysis and information gathering, to more of a very autonomous, as well as capabilities to act and adjust their behavior responses based on the feedback and response they get and make adjustments. So these are the ones that are basically allowing us to get as closer to human reactions to a specific situation, incidents as possible. And right now, the way the agents are building that, they're each one of them being focused on one specific task. Here's another graphical vision of movement from the traditional generative AI base that happened. And this we're talking about 2-3 years ago. AI has been around a long time, but the whole popularity of generative AI really started end of 2022. So we're talking about 2 years. Within 2 years' time, we have rapidly moved from a very reactive static approach to a highly adaptive, proactive, and ability to deal with a very complex workflows environment, okay? So in summary, AI agents are gonna be defining the AI ecosystem and environment in coming years. Already, they've taken over the traditional approaches to AI applications through just use a ChatGPT. Some people are beginning to even be introduced to concepts of these platforms. And I use ChatGPT as an example of it. There's a proliferation of such platforms there, from open source to proprietary. If you have not experimented with any of those platforms, whether it's an OpenAI ChatGPT, Cloud from Anthropic, Gemini from Google, Llama from Meta, or any other, and there are various versions of them with a higher level like Perplexity or Pi, all of them. And a lot of them have become more very personalized, voice activated. You can actually carry on conversation with them. If time allows, I will demonstrate a few of them. Agentic AIs are going to take that whole entire space entirely new direction, new front, with a lot more capabilities, okay? Just to give you an idea of examples of how these agents are deployed, I'm going to go through a few examples of them, considering the time is limited. I'm not going to spend much time detailing each one of them. And these are by no means an exhaustive list. There is not a single domain of socioeconomic that agents are not being either researched or applied or used for. So these are just a few examples of it. We're going to look at software development, how now AIs are actually writing the codes. I saw an advertisement the other day that they were trying to hire a virtual AI employee. I thought it was a joke, but I looked into it. Actually, it wasn't. They are contemplating that as agents become that. So basically, they're asking for is that, is there a company who can create an AI agent that does the kind of work of their human-based employee can do? Which in a way, is, in some regards, scary. Once we talk about limitations, that is a highly risk. But that's the kind of thinking that is emerging, that these are the tasks, if I can have a well-defined description of the task, the workflow, and all of them, can an AI agent do all of that and do it more effectively? Because bear in mind, AI agents are, trainable, and they can do that. So same thing with the, robotic process automation and other industries. So let's take a look at each one of them. In software development, basically, one of the early promises of agents are that agents actually now, these days, write codes. In the past, one of the major requirements and a skill set needed to do any software development is that you need someone who knows programming and to write a code. Now you have AI agents that actually can write code sometimes more efficiently than a lot of programmers. The challenge is that you still need to understand, because even if they write a program, you need to understand what that program is. So that's where, in fact, the balance comes in, that how much programming someone needs to know to use these AI agents to write the code for them. And that's going to be in the software engineering or software development, one of the biggest capabilities that's going to emerge. And a lot of focus on on AI agents is on that. On robotic process automation, agents are going to push the robotic activities to the highest level possible. You're going to see robots now deployed in many industries, not to mention, for in fact, robots are being now built for personal use in a variety of settings. Again, I'm going to go back to the healthcare example of it. It's one of the spaces that it's on my interest, and I think that's an area that you can actually see benefit. These are robots, for instance, can help provide care for elderlies. Robots that can remind them on adherence to their medication, make sure if they fall, they help them get up, provide all the cares that these days, as our population is aging and we are reaching a level that significant portion of population need care, physical care during their senior years. We're shortage of human resources to address all the needs. So if robots can come and provide that basic care in terms of communication, provide a company, reminder of their medication requirements that they need to take, as well as providing these type of cares when a person needs help to get up or get some personal service, that is beneficial use of this robotic process automation. So AI and robots are meeting, and you're going to see a lot of different flavors, version of it, a lot of fictional too. I don't know how many people remember the movie I, Robots. Probably going to see a lot of Hollywood movies coming out of this concept too. And in fact, a lot of people already think that robots are going to take the world. I personally don't subscribe to it, but so we're going to see a lot of tools in robotics that are going to emerge that are very agent-based. Customer support probably is going to be one of the early adopters of these capabilities. Already a lot of startups in the customer experience, customer support side. In fact, we have a new colleague here, Nikita, sitting in the back of the room. He has his own startup company, a CX startup. And I'm fortunate to have him join us. He's going to be joining us as adjunct faculty for our new master's degree in science and AI that we have just got approved and going to launch. So this is going to be an area that you're going to see significant intelligent-based conversational customer support and customer service that beyond the traditional robotic answering that often frustrated users. You will call someone instead of human person, you get a menu-driven type of robotic conversation that, if you need this, press 1. If you need that, press 2. If you need, and often your need may not fall into the what is prescribed menu-driven, and you get frustrated, you want to talk to someone live, that the robot will not allow you to get to a live person, and you will spend 10, 15 minutes cursing at that robot. Now you could actually have just someone answer the phone and said, hi, can I help you? No menu, nothing, and you have a very intelligent conversation based on needs, a context-based conversation that the agent is intelligent enough to carry on and then find any nuances of your needs and possibly provide most answers to the questions that needed, and then have human intervention as needed. But then a lot of people have had that conversations with these potential new applications, and often they did not even realize they were not talking to a live person. The conversation was so intelligent and rational, very similar to that example, that Astro project that we saw on 60 Minutes, that you can actually carry on, by looking at a painting, say, oh, what do you see in that painting? And then carry on conversation that, oh, what kind of mood that subject is in that painting. I mean, that's beyond just the average robotic in the past. This is going to be very different. This is going to be a very context-based, industry-based, and be able to handle many nuances of the support for the customers. Across all businesses and enterprise, we're going to see significant deployment of agents. Agents basically are built around the enterprise workflow. There is not a business that does not have a type of workflow or business processes that cannot be automated. The whole idea is that understanding what that workflow is. And in fact, most examples of agents is that identify your workflow, then build the agent. Or whatever, you remember there was a TV series many years ago, Have Gun Will Travel. We should have that now saying that have workflow, will have an agent. So having a workflow allows you to build an agent, customize it to that workflow, and in fact, improve and make that workflow a lot more efficient. So we're going to see now in terms of the companies that are in the business of enterprise workflow, building these type of agent capabilities to their platforms. And whether it's in sales, whether it's in marketing, whether in any type of organizations, that portion of it. And we're going to see an example of it in even places such as security, which is one of the key concern right now with the proliferation of AI and AI agents that are be vulnerable. In fact, this week right now in the city of San Francisco is hosting one of the largest cybersecurity event known as RSA at our Moscone Center. The whole conference and event is all about AI and security and cybersecurity. So one of the key things we could do with these type of agents, again, is that to have a proactive security agent that basically monitors, not only that, looks for vulnerability in any infrastructure that is vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks by, instead of waiting again, like happens in the past, that you would be attacked, either denial of service or a phishing, a attack, or a type of ransomware attack. You could actually now have agents continuously monitoring, do that too, okay? And we have to again. Okay, all right. So we could actually now create agents that not only in charge of the security of the system, but also in terms of observing it, monitoring it, and checking for a variety of these vulnerable points to have. And especially when it comes to data, to monitor data address, data in motion, to make sure any data exchange are well encrypted, secure, all that. So there is not a limitation to what you can do with AI agent security, because this is one of the area that is mostly needed as AI advances. Supply chain is another area, and this is a very generic supply chain of not a specific industry that is very amenable to introduction of agents for automation of supply chain, improvement of the whole processes, optimization of the processes, as well as allow a whole set of agents to do all the works, negotiations, and dealing that needs to be done supply chain between various stakeholders to make sure there is a continuous, streamlined, and efficient supply chain. Now, in some industries, especially pharmaceutical industry, and by its extension, the biopharmaceutical industries that are very sensitive to supply chain because they're dealing with a products that it's very sensitive for human being. They're needed for very life-threatening type of conditions that they need to do. You need to make sure there's integrity of this supply chain. That many years ago, they were trying to find out the whole life cycle of a products from the point of manufacturing to the distribution, to the point of sales, to a process known as e-pedigree, electronic pedigree, trying to maintain the integrity of this whole process, make sure there's no drug that is adulterated, there's no fake drugs entering the market. Now, this is across for many other markets too. In fact, one of the supply chain markets that many people may not think that is vulnerable to this kind of adulteration is like, guess what? Printers ink. Printers ink apparently is a very luxury and very profitable supply chain. So many years ago, people realized that throughout the whole supply chain, a lot of times, especially big companies like HP, who makes a significant revenue generation on the ink. Remember, they give you away printers for free, but they charge you on the ink. They find out their supply chain people were selling boxes of HP printed inks, but they figured out none of them were HP inks inside. So it's an easy, because nobody thought it needs to be secure. So it was getting, rerouted to these warehouses, and cheap inks were being replaced with the price of it, the expensive ones, and then they would actually sell the other ones that they have rerouted them to, or just use the packaging, which was the easier way they found out that. So supply chain is not beyond being vulnerability of these type of activities, and pharmaceutical more so. So AI can definitely impact this space in a very significant way by trying to do logistic optimization, and to try to do real-time, visibility and monitoring and proactive monitoring in that space. Last industry I'm going to focus on, and this is my industry of interest, is healthcare. Healthcare has been looking at artificial intelligence for many years in many different parts of it. A lot of people refer to healthcare, they think it's mostly doctors. Healthcare is one of the largest industries or portion of economy. It comprises in the US 20% of GDP. Single-handedly, it is the largest because it comprises a very broad stakeholders and players in two broad categories of providers and payers. Payers being the insurance companies, private, or the biggest one, the government, the Center for Medical Services. So we have significant participation of many stakeholder organizations in this space. So healthcare has been looking at application of AI in many different portion of it, including into the actual clinical setting for clinical diagnostics. Right now, there are multiple approaches using AI for clinical diagnostics. The area that has been actually AI had been deployed for years without even before Gen AI or agents came in the area on the imaging side. Most of the imaging devices, X-rays, MRI, CAT scans, PET scans are all digital. All those initial lab tests, results from those imagings are read by a computer, known as computer-aided detection and diagnostics. And it's an AI-enabled capabilities that does an early detection. And again, because it's built on identifying anomalies, and since you have so much data and our digital data that can really identify the pattern and do pattern recognition, do that, it's much better way of observing these anomalies than a traditional analog, the naked eye of a radiologist clinician. And remember, in the past, we all used to carry these analog X-ray films, and the doctor would put it on a backdrop of a light and look at it. Now AI owns that too. Of course, a clinician, a radiologist needs to sign off for it to make it official. So that's been an area, but now this is being applied across the diagnostics, from the early diagnostics to very advanced, and use of it in what's called a precision medicine, which is trying to identify areas that with the minimal intrusion, surgeries and procedures using computers and AI. And then not to mention across its administrative side of it. So healthcare is in a space that it's very amenable to application AI across, because it is need of optimization, it's need of reducing cost of operation, and ultimately with the objective of providing value care, better care. So there is not a limit to where it's being applied right now. So a large number of these startups and large companies are focusing on application of AI, and now more so AI agents for the healthcare side. With the time limit I have, I want to now move on to make sure that as much as we think there is a possible benefits of application of AI into every area, every social economic activities of our society, there are challenges and there are perils with it too. So I don't want to just give you guys a one-sided rosy picture. Yes, significant promises are there to be gained, but at the same time, we need to be very aware of these challenges. AI still has its own limitations. We are still, many years away from having a human-centric AI that actually does represent the best interest of a human being. So we are not there yet. AI still is not perfect. It's not panacea for all ills, as we're going to see. It does not have answers to all the questions, despite the fact there's unfortunately more reliance now on AI as having the ultimate answer and truth. And as we move into different contexts, there are risks associated with its use if it's not within a well-defined policies or guardrails to make sure we do not cross line. I already mentioned the impact that it's being forecasted on jobs. Often, anytime I give a talk on AI, AI is going to replace my job. Well, this is the report that was just done recently on behalf of the World Economic Forum, which was just held a few months ago. And at the same time, it provides a rosy picture of new jobs being created as a result of this industry. Notice that it says that by 2030, 170 million jobs will be created. But at the same time, during this period of time, we'll have 92 million current jobs being displaced. So we're going to go through a very displaced job and displaced skill set period of time that certain jobs, unfortunately, will be eliminated. Certain skill sets will no longer be needed because we're going to get automated through AI and AI agents. So either those individuals need to go through reskilling, and that's usually the unfortunate thing what happens during these rapid industrial changes, technological development. When it happened during Industrial Revolution 1.0, it took sometimes generations for those displacement to really show their impact. When the first tractor came, and one tractor was plowing the field work of 100 farmers. So yes, eventually 100 farmers were displaced because the tractor was doing a job of 100 of them. Now they were forced to go into cities and find new jobs. But those were that. The difference this time around is that this is happening in a matter of 2-3 years. We're talking about the very rapid advancement changing. The pace of adoption of AI and development of AI is much more rapid than ever in the history of humankind. So we are in a very interesting time. And unfortunately, we need to make sure social policies that provide a provision for this transition I'm not sure at this stage we have them. That's a different topic for a different day. Security, I've already mentioned. I'm not going to belabor on that one. AI is exacerbating, vulnerabilities of security because now AI is smarter. In fact, if there were before human beings, hackers try to go by writing various codes, hack into a system to cause denial of service or provide a ransomware. Now you can actually train an AI agent to do it. So there is a multiplication factor of, and so as the capabilities of those adverse use of AI is expanding, our vulnerabilities are not really going to be protected as well because our infrastructure is getting ever more connected through Internet of Things, and we are not sure we do have adequate resources or attention of our governments to address them. Privacy, particularly, is going to get a lot worse if the social media tested our regulation, our policies on privacy. AI is going to be, again, expanding those vulnerabilities because AI can train itself to become like us, gather information about our behavior, gather information about our transactions, and then learn to mimic us in terms of if you ever have to use a voice activation to access, let's say, your bank account, AI can clearly create a recording to mimic our voices through all the different videos or capabilities that we are sharing on our media. So privacy is going to become a lot more of a challenge. And with other regulations, the only region that is thinking of these things are Europe right now. Europe has drafted an AI Regulation Act, and they are looking into expanding the previous Data Privacy Act, GDPR, which actually in our social media, everyone's private data is opted out unless they opt in, versus in the US, we are reversed. Bias continues to be an issue. No progress on that in the AI era either. I had the same concern when I presented last year. So as we are moving more into advancement of AI, again, AI reflects our social collective behavior. So if there are bias into our social collective behavior in a variety of our socioeconomic interactions, that data is going to get gathered. So agents are going to basically reflect, or AI will reflect those biases there too. So that is a major concern of, in some practices. And because AI is not really a panacea for our social ills, it doesn't actually add to it, it exacerbates it. So it's not an AI issue necessarily, is that as long as we have biases in our socioeconomic interactions, that will be reflected in this automation. And this is the one that actually is very dear to me, is that our digital gap is going to get much wider. If the era of digital revolution happened 30, 40 years ago with the introduction of digital computers, internet, and online, all that, now with AI, the whole digital divide is going to get much wider. Large number of our socio-economic sectors of society are going to be left up access to these skill sets. And as we saw from the World Economic Report, the future jobs are all going to be AI. There's going to be a requirement on AI literacy, AI skills. If you look at the major sites for job listings, from LinkedIn to other sites, AI already has become part of that type of description. Familiarity with basic use of any type of platform, whether you're working in legal field, in other fields, that you have to be able to use them for the benefit of that specific organization, industry, is part of the requirement. And you have to still be able to use them in a very, intelligent way of being able to have a critical thinking on top of that. How do you, when you prompt a platform to get an answer, how do you check it? How do you verify it? How do you validate it? So those are going to be the kind of skill sets that it's going to require. So that's going to be a major issue on this regard. So I'm going to end my talk by leaving usually what I think of what AI is. In my view, AI is ultimately collaboration between man and machine. As long as man or human being acts in the best interest of other human beings, all these advancements will help elevate all of us. So I really don't believe AI, as some people are, providing concern alerts about AI being a threat. I don't consider AI itself to be a threat. I think ultimately, as long as we have this collaboration between man and machine used for the benefit of businesses, but at the same time, benefit of the society and everybody else, and it uplifts humanity in all its various manifestations of it. That's a good use of it. And that responsibility, it collectively rests with us. So I'm going to stop here too. And I know there are some already people had questions and answer questions. Make sure we have enough time to answer questions for the people in the auditorium here as well as online. So I'm hoping that if you see someone in the chat, Gracie, that have a question, we can answer them too. I know you had a questions, Nicole, please. Yeah. Correct. 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 I cannot speak specifically about ISO. I haven't really kept up with exactly doing that. But this week, if you look at the agenda for RSA in terms of security, especially in the security area, significant number of startups, organizations, and I presume by implication, ISO and other standard organizations are exactly working on what you just talked about. This is going to be, in fact, with these kind of agents that are emerging, this whole concept proactive monitoring of these security threats and other areas, it's going to be emerging. Now, you can apply that to any area, not only security, all that too. So I cannot imagine ISO is not looking at it, whether they have done or waiting for the industry, other industries to really set the standards for that kind of forensic you're referring to. But that's definitely in order. And if you ever chance, unfortunately, they made it very close. Even the exhibit hall is not open for free to a lot of students. I was asking my students to go to that. They're making it very, expensive to get into that. But a lot of conversations, if you look at the agenda, is around that. Yes. Oh, sure. The question was, for my colleague, was that the efforts on AI for forensic, to do forensic analysis of using AI by organizations such as ISO, the International Standard Organizations, and other organizations similar. And I mentioned to her that I don't specifically know the answer to ISO's efforts, but significant efforts it's being applied to looking at AI, a role of AIs for forensic analysis of that. So yes. Do we have a question online? So the question is, please talk about reskilling needed for the future jobs or other type of employment. The minimum reskilling that I think is needed is the concept of broad concept of AI literacy. I mean, one of these topics that we're talking about here, it could be considered about AI and AI literacy. Now, then you can define the different levels of AI literacy based on the type of job environment. For instance, one of the key things needed nowadays is that every educational program, I would say from kindergarten through Institute of Higher Education, need to include AI in their curricula. You cannot have an educational program that does not provide awareness of AI appropriate. Now, a lot of them could be basically, depending on the age, appropriate level, grade level, could be in terms of what they do from creativity to having help with the learning the basic fundamentals of knowledge, to help with map. Already significant efforts done in having tutorials or a teaching assistant or educational supplement in our schools using AI. AI actually now can interact with individual, customize it. A lot of people who have learning disabilities, actually there are AI tools specifically for those people with learning disabilities that can help them overcome their learning disabilities. So again, if AI is deployed in a good use, it's very beneficial. At the same time, jobs, simple use these things, everybody needs to be able to that. If you have access to these platforms, from OpenAI, ChatGPT, Gemini. How would you leverage them for that business? What is the basics of using or querying them, which is referred to as prompt engineering? So based on the type of activities, these are minimum skill sets needed. Just like 30, 40 years ago, everybody had to learn how to use a computer, how to be able to go online, do an email, open up a Word or personal productivity document, whether you use a Google version or Microsoft, doesn't matter. The whole concept of that electronic communication, electronic engagement, electronic document creation. Now, AI use, it's becoming very similar to that level at the minimal. Now, as we're going to see with these emergence of AI agents, there are probably going to be some use of it in any type of work. So some training needs to happen. So definitely reskilling at all levels, from our educational levels to work levels, needs to happen. And then one of the key things we are doing here in this kind of our activities is that providing this general knowledge to our community, but also engaging. One of the key activities actually we are doing with a partner, if I may introduce our partner here, Genesis Works Bay Area, is they are targeting high school students, young professionals from all the high schools throughout the community, and try to provide them with these type of advanced training through a summer cohorts program. We are partnering with them, and we're trying to offer them this. Last summer, we started teaching them AI literacy, and this whole summer, the focus would be on really teaching them AI literacy, because that's a future requirement, both educationally and professionally. Hopefully, I address that. How will AI agents affect sports? Well, I don't know in terms of, you mean the result of the sports, or what's going on, the entertainment, all the gaming that is going around them. I imagine AI agents are going to be much smarter in figuring out the odds of a game. And as we have, witnessing through our playoffs, basketball playoffs, everybody's trying to figure out that who's going to win the next game, our Warriors game or not. So AI is going to be basically a lot more intelligent in gathering data, analyzing past results, and making prediction than any of the sportcaster that we know of. But that's it. In fact, sport analytics has been one of the areas that data analytics was used. So I would not be surprised there's a significant number of AI apps and AI agent apps are emerging for the sport analytics itself. Great question. Well, Richard, I hope you're not expecting me to repeat all that as a question. It's just a comment. Okay. All right. Yes. Okay. So for the audience online, I'm not going to repeat. There was a comment mostly from my colleagues on supply chain management that one of the needs of supply chain management, if I am rephrasing you correctly, has been trying to make prediction of the demand, whether it's a dependent or independent demands. And definitely that's a major issue for supply chain across all industries. But again, as we looked at the specific industry within the supply chain, whether you're looking at automotive industry, the example you used, or pharmaceutical industries, there are existing workflows in play that right now, even despite significant data that is available, are not optimized, are not, visibly, available in terms of the real time to the organizations. So even we're not leveraging the low-hanging fruits of what AI or predictive analytics can do for that. So I think the idea would be to identify where those vulnerabilities and those areas of optimization that AI, at least as a low-hanging fruit, can apply. A good example was that some of us attended the biopharmaceutical supply chain management conference a few weeks ago. And for them, in various areas, there was conversation about that, from pharmaceutical industries to the distributors to the end users. They don't really have all the good information to know exactly what's happening. When a shipment is stuck somewhere, they have no idea where it is, what happened to it, why it's not, at the intended destination. So there are areas that AI could probably short-term immediately help and to improve. But to answer all the question again, I think we should always, as I mentioned, AI is not panacea. It's not going to have all the answers immediately. Ultimately, as I said, it's a collaboration man and machine. The more intelligence you can add into processes to enable an intelligent decision-making, it would help with the optimization process, in my view. Well, good comment, Richard. Definitely an agreement. Other questions from the audience here or online? Law enforcement. Law enforcement actually has been leveraging data and intelligence for a long time. I mean, in fact, there were, I would say, certain sectors where the early use of what we call, use of actionable intelligence. So AI actually right now is used sometimes very controversially in terms of a biofacial detection through the cameras, visual recognition of that. And if you notice that a lot of times when they are having to search for a instigator of a criminal act, they leverage all the AI tools in terms of facial recognition and all the other tools and information gathering. So they've been leveraging that quite a bit. Often it kind of conflicts with our interest in privacy. Remember, depending on the different eras, we had an issue that how much they're allowed to collect information about our normal behavior in a typical settings like airports, all this, that, or for on street cameras. But they are using significant, AI in facial recognition, other information, and other type of, criminal investigation. So AI has been deployed and is used in full-fledged in a lot of law enforcement across not only locally, but internationally. Our military intelligence uses AI. Globally, they use AI for enforcement purposes or for information gathering for actionable intelligence. So it's heavily used. Okay. Aparna. Sure. Sure. Okay. Let's go back to the whole concept of LLMs, large language models. Large language models are based on gathering large volume of data and create an algorithm modeling based on reasoning that tries to cover a very broad issue or topic, discuss that. Now, let's take a look at a few examples of the agents, okay? A very basic concept of the agent. I didn't want to get into the technical side for this audience, but let's just dive into the answer question. A very basic concept of an agent is that you basically create a very specific task. So the whole concept of large language models are there. The reasoning is there, but in a very focused and small, we call it small language models, focus on that specific workflow context. So that agent then basically will receive information from that environment, that it is the context of that task, through its sensors based, goes through its reasoning focus on that. So you don't need to boil the ocean, which is LLMs often are, have answers to everything. You can have a very small footprint of those reasoning foundations. And then based on that, it will through the mechanism that can act, which are called actuators. It will take act and then will receive feedback from the environment for that self-learning process. So then so this is a very high-level architecture view of agent. So then you can create a different type of agents. Let me close that. So we could take basically agents that are simple reflex agents. So you only basically train that, okay, there are sensors, get, information from sensors, decide what that means. I mean, a good example would be like, take a smoke detector that it was before just beeping. Now it takes action that call all the responsible people for that, right? Be able to act on it, alert information, not just beep, that was absolutely, like reacted that something was sensed and the action was a beeping that happens with the smoke alarms or all this, carbon monoxide, carbon detectors, all that, right? So you can actually make it a lot more intelligent that provide an action for it too, and provide, or provide guidance to people who need to act on the top of it as well. So let's say we can put this kind of sensors in an environmentally or chemically hazardous environment, that you can have significant intelligence based on the access, right? Then you could actually create what's called a model-based replay agent. So difference between what you were asking, the traditional LLMs that you have one large LLM, requires significant computing footprint to go. Sometimes people use it for a simple footprint. Like, so you don't want to use let's say a ChatGPT said that, what time is it? Right? That's a waste of ChatGPT resources, right? You could actually ask Siri in your computer, do it all that too. Now, Siri eventually is going to have an LLM behind it too when we see the intelligent version come in. But then you could really customize these type of agents in a very smaller footprint, make it deployable, and ultimately bring this type of capabilities, what we call AI at the edge. And that's when you have that, and you can make it as complicated, as complex as you want. So there's no limit of the level of how you could build the agents to be proactive and create, and based on that, to actually what's concept of multi-agents. You could actually create an agent that has multi sub-agents at its activities. So that's the benefit of it. That's very focused, very task-oriented, actionable-oriented, and it may not require the kind of footprint that large LLMs do, right? Utility-based agents. So there's no limitation of the type of agents you could build. But that's really, I don't know whether I answered the question or not, but that's where the trend is. Rather than trying to build one large LLM again, as like Deep Discovery was trying to do and others at lower cost, why not build all these customized, smaller footprint LLMs or reasoning models with a very focus on specific workflows, tasks, and then be able to create interaction among them through a multi-agent type of capabilities. Well, in the reasoning model that you build for all of them, whether small, all that, there is some reasoning built. Whether you build it on random forest, build it on decision tree, build all that. Any type of predictive analytics requires a reasoning model approach to it. Any type of machine learning, whether it's supervised, unsupervised, requires an approach to how you come to that decision. And then you can check them, revise them, update them as data becomes available. So, and that could be at any level, right? Small, large, and multitask. So that process of reasoning, it is embedded in every AI activities. Doesn't need to be, but you could build the largest possible LLMs that tries to answer every possible question at ChatGPT, because you can ask ChatGPT any question and tries to answer that. Go ahead. In fact, one of the, I think, advantage agents are emerging, they're multilingual. They can, at the same time, in real time, make the translation. You can ask an agent in English and request a reply in Spanish, you would do that. But if I thought you were talking about programming language, the program language these days that are becoming more default and de facto programming for all these softwares are known as Python. But the program language itself have evolved. There are multiple other program languages that people have used. Python is one of them. You still need, in some environment, a version of Java. in the original Java programming, object-oriented programming. Some use other programming language, R, for that, but Python by far is the primary or de facto program language that. But in terms of actual human languages, it is multilingual. Okay, I guess we are ending our session officially. Thanks everyone for attention. I'm here if someone wants to have a